blue.
We're on, we're live.
Well, welcome everybody for our work session. Decide our next steps. We have everybody in person here, and Derek is dialed in. So I don't know how we want to start for sure. I did print out, and then Gina included in your packet kind of the research I'd done in the last week and phone calls today with some physicians and some information from Southwest District Health. I guess I'll start. On the front of that, in all the studies I said, this has been published many times, and there's basically a lack of scientific consensus about the impact of school closures and reopenings in the community, transmission of SARS-CoV-2. There's considerable concern about the indirect effect of school closures on students and parents, and I think that's probably what brought us here today. We've all continued to do our research. I had a phone call with Southwest District Health last Friday. We followed up with an email today. I included some of that information in here. I include the CDC guidelines, which came from Primary Health this morning, and talking with two of their doctors. I think for the point of discussion today is when we look at opening, we look at substantial uncontrolled transmission in the state. That's what the CDC says. And then the school opening from the state website is substantial community transmission. The number that they had thrown out originally by county is 5 cases per 10,000. And that's why they have Kane County in total in the red zone. And today's number for Middleton, the last 7 moving average, I think was 1.6. Understanding we do have some 83607 zip code in our area, and understanding that we have teachers in a community that does move around the Treasure Valley. I think that's kind of a recap of where we're at. So I know I looked at the Valley View kind of numbers, and Alicia, I know you talked about it.
So I called, and their superintendent was kind enough to speak with me for a few minutes today, because Valley View's reopening plan has, and I can forward you this, they have criteria for an A/B schedule based on a 2-week trend, and also criteria for students learning from home based on a 2-week trend. So they're looking at their data every 2 weeks, and that determines whether they're on their A/B schedule, which would be our yellow, or their red category, which would be online learning. And these are the bullet points that they have. For it to be based on a A/B schedule, so a yellow, 10 to 20% of students absent from school as a result of COVID diagnosis or exposure. So meaning they have less than that. That's the threshold. 10 to 20% of staff absent from school as a result of COVID diagnosis or exposure. 90% or more compliant wearing face cloth coverings. They do have a face mask mandate in Valley View District. The ability to implement physical distancing requirements, ability of substitutes and maintenance staff. Coverage may be necessary using school-based resources to cover classrooms during prep or temporary change of assignments, and availability of bus drivers. And then their threshold to make it completely online would be greater than 25% of students absent from school as a result of COVID diagnosis or exposure, greater than 25% of staff absent from school as a result of COVID diagnosis or exposure, less than 90% compliant wearing face cloth coverings, the ability to implement physical distancing requirements, ability of substitutes and maintenance classrooms, and maintenance cannot be covered with the school-based resources available, and the ability of bus drivers. Bus routes cannot be covered, which results in significant delays to routes. So those are the things that our Valley View is looking at. In my conversation today, I asked where they came up with the 10 to 20% or where that recommendation came from. And they said that they're working closely with their school nurse, but he didn't have any other information than that. I also spoke with Kim at the Southwest District Health Department today for about 30 minutes because I was trying to figure out, I know that sometimes during flu season, the schools get shut down if there's too many kids absent. And I wanted to know, how did the health department determine that? Because I know they're kind of involved in that as well. And I was shocked to learn that they don't have a formula for that it's really based up to the schools. And I know Emmett closed some of their schools last year due to influenza. And basically it comes down to the school feeling like it's not worth holding school because so many kids are sick. And so they choose to close it. So I was very surprised that there was no actual data to support that or formula that they used. It really was just based on what those thresholds were. I also, in my conversation with her, appreciated the fact that we could have a very open conversation, and this is all new to them too. And they're very supportive of the school districts and very open to conversations. And, she was very good to talk me through things. And as I asked questions, she did say that they had very successful summer schools this summer. I asked about daycares, and she said the daycares have been pretty well and done pretty well. And she said the reason for that is, from what they can tell, is they're the ones that can adhere to the social distancing and keep them spread out. And because they're in cohorts, so like daycare, the same kids are together with like one teacher. So it's one with like 12 kids or 10 kids. They're able to select those people if someone turns positive. Like in their summer school classes, they didn't have to quarantine the whole class. They just had to do one person because they were spaced appropriately. And she said the ones that just said whatever and didn't follow those guidelines, those were the ones that became more troublesome. So that was encouraging to me because I feel like our yellow and red situations are both set up to really adhere to that social distancing. I do, as we look at the data and just knowing what's coming down the pipeline, I really hope at some type, somehow we can get the kids some face-to-face learning before flu season hits, because I feel like once flu season hits and then you have COVID on top of it, then it is going to be an absolute necessary, watching those hospital numbers, because you can't tell a difference. And I just think, if we can maximize this time prior to that, the best we can, let the kids go outside for class, spread them out. The other thing she talked about was that 15-minute timeline. That does play a part too. She just said the longer they're not in, if they're close together and not wearing masks for longer than 15 minutes, that really does increase their risk. So just some good points, talking points with them. They are really trying to support the health or the school districts. I asked her how come everybody can do something different when the health department's supposed to say, and she just said, well, we're supposed to make recommendations. And that's what they do, is make the recommendations. She did address the liability piece and say that we know that there's a lot of concern about the liability. And she said, I know the legislature is supposed to address that too, but she's like, we don't really have answers on that part. So that might not answer your questions, but that's kind of what I gleaned from her conversation today.
When I talked to her, she made it very clear that they report at county-wide levels, and that if they were going to talk about, we looked at Middleton numbers, and she said, if you looked at hospitalizations they're so low, or deaths non-existent for us, that if they were to report any of those numbers, that they would probably be in violation of HIPAA, because we could, as a town, we would know there was potentially one or two people only infected, and if that hospitalization got out, it would be very hard to report at that level. That their focus was county-wide, and our job was school-wide, so that kind of the way they set up. And I do know on the legislative agenda for next week, the governor is not going to address school board role versus health district role in opening schools. That's not on the agenda. They mentioned that would be handled during general session after January, but it seemed like both sides we're going to work with the Southwest District Health. They're going to work with us. The doctors group that I talked with, who I thought everybody got the email, maybe just came to the board chair. Did you? I didn't. So much I didn't realize I had a conversation with them. So it's St. Luke's, it's St. Al's, it's pediatricians, it's the Magic Valley. We had an hour Zoom call today So that was helpful. Talking about testing and how it is in Ada County, how it is in Nampa and Canyon County. And, they're worried when the testing rate, is over that 10%, over that 15%. So if that's the number, I think that we need to be in the back of our minds, understand what does it look like? What would it take for us to shut down and go 100% online? I think we have to have some number out there. Notre Dame just shut down today for 2 weeks. They'd opened up. I know it's college, but still,
UNC
Michigan
did too.
State just shut down completely. So I think we would.
UNC.
And so, I think we have to understand that from our last meeting, we want to open up. We want to figure out a way to do that as safely as possible. But I think we also have to have a backstop of, okay, this is more than we can fight off. And I think that backstop, whether it's the Valley View numbers, I don't know how many teachers we could, at what percentage teachers being out could we not operate?
Well, and I have a few different data points to share with you. One of them is that our some information regarding our substitute guest teachers. So we sent out a survey, it was probably about 4 weeks ago, to our subs, trying to just get a feel for their availability this fall, given the pandemic. Are they still willing to come in? Are they in a position where they will consider that? We didn't have a super high response rate, which is a little concerning in itself. So we had 85 responses. We had about 141 active subs last year. So of those 85 that responded, there was a good response rate for yes, I'm available and willing, and that was 83%. So about 71 of the 85 said they were willing and available to come back and help us out this fall. But we do have another huge number hanging out there that we haven't been able to verify.
Okay.
In a given school year, not this year, but past history, how many subs do we use typically in a day in the fall? Do you know, Cheryl? Any averages, any guesses, Lisa?
Laura, do you have a guess?
It really depends on the day, but I would say average probably 20.
So 20.
I can tell you, even with that average, it's been a chronic problem for us to get
Yeah, I know.
vacancies filled. I mean, it is always a struggle, even under normal conditions.
But we did think going to 4 days is going to stop some of that, right? Because we're not going to have
We're
teachers
hopeful.
out for that.
Yes.
So that was the.
Now we have the pandemic
I
on the
know,
other
right?
side working against us.
Derek, anything to add or thoughts or?
Not at this point.
Before we get too far, this is Alicia, for those who are listening online. When we're talking about the data that we're pulling by zip code, it can be found on the Southwest District Health site under their COVID section. And then it pulls up on their webpage, the data dashboard. And then there's tabs right across the top, and you can break it down by city and by zip code. And there's healthcare capacity. There's a lot of different tabs there. So a lot of this data that we're referring to is coming right off of that website.
And I can give you some numbers on zip codes if that would be helpful with your.
Yeah, do you know the Star and Caldwell?
Yeah, so when we're just looking at our student population, about 91% of our students are in just two zip codes, 83644 and 83607. And just 83644 by itself, Middleton is about 65%, with the remaining over in 83607. And then when we look at staff, that one's a little bit more spread out. So only 35% of us are in Middleton, 83644. We have about 19% in 83607. And then combined in 83686 and 83687, we have about 11%. And then remaining is mostly spread out. Ada County gets a little more difficult to track.
I guess three other notes that I pulled together from the health district. They were masks will decrease the number of kids, staff that go on to develop symptoms of COVID. They may not decrease the number of kids, staff that have to quarantine, depending on our distancing. The end goal is to decrease the number of people who go on to develop illness. It appears that services are not a major transmission route. They're still recommending the cleaning that we've addressed. Social distancing, wearing face coverings, washing your hands are still going to be the focus for schools. I think that's hasn't changed. We've all heard it, but that's directly from the health department. And they have verified with me as well that they would be doing the tracking if we did have a case. That's
Correct, and we have always relied on them to
Them to
help
do
us
that.
with them.
so still be partnered. Dave, you want to add from the MEA side?
Yeah, I'd just like to emphasize that, based on that survey results that I shared with you, and I thank you, Chairman and trustees, for being receptive to the staff perspective on this issue. But we want to go back to school as well. Our concern is the safety. Our concern is any metrics that we, as a district, develop, or you as a board develop, if it's too far out of line from what the Southwest District Health is recommending, that's where our concerns come from. And then we also have some that are really concerned about the masks being mandated or not, because as you just pointed out, Chairman, that it does help lower the cases getting bigger, not necessarily the exposure rate, but the developing the illness. So that is a huge concern for us, as well as if the county is red, and as Superintendent Beck just pointed out, that we do have a lot of staff that live in Ada County and Nampa and Caldwell. And then we know that Middleton is 5-6 miles from Caldwell, so people go to Caldwell, Nampa, and Boise for shopping. So once we get into school and we're all doing that commuting, then we're worried about, well, we might see a spike like that as well.
No, well, I think the idea is two things. In all my reading, if you looked at how countries opened back up, they didn't wearing masks was a key component in their community spread. Some opened up without masks and they spiked back up, and when they put the masks on there, they dropped back down. The data is not exact, but it seems to be across the board that masks are going to be key to this, just by the way it seems to be spread. That's the droplets. And ironically, I read some stuff, if your mask is too porous, you actually take the bigger droplets, make them smaller, push them through. So you've got to make sure that you at least have a mask. The 3-layered mask is the best. One on the inside, one on the side, and then a replaceable filter type material. That's what I have, just a piece of paper in between, just to reduce that spread. That's not perfect. I would assume we'll have a case of COVID in our school one way or the other. I don't think we're going to get to zero, but I think the benefits of being open, if we can maintain a comfortable level, the social distancing, percentage of masks being worn. I don't know that in our community mandating masks is the best scenario. I think somebody said the rule is just wear them.
Well, I think we made it, this is Jake, by the way, for those, we reworded it to say that we ask you to wear a mask, period. You know, and the concern was that what are we going to do if somebody's just adamantly against it or comes up with, I mean, if you want, you can go online. There's a great list of reasons why you shouldn't wear a mask. And is it worth the fight? Is it worth the fight to pack the principal's office with people that aren't interested in wearing masks? Or do we just, you know, what, and if that's something we need to take care of, let's come up with a contingency plan. But otherwise, you know, just strongly wording it and just say, we ask that you wear masks. Is it a mandate? No, but do we want to tell everybody that it's not a mandate? No, I'm just with it strongly worded of, we ask you to wear masks, and leave it at that.
But I think it'll show, the more people that wear masks, the longer we stay in school. The less people that do, the sooner it gets shut down. I mean,
I think that's the game we're playing. I also think that we add to that, if you don't have a mask, then you have to be 6+ feet away from any staff member. I mean, we have to take this serious if we're gonna at all have a chance to stay open. It's fairly easy for the school board to say, we're going to open on September 8th. It's going to take a community effort to be open on September 15th. And that's, the school board could get things started. The community has to be able to participate or we have no chance. Yeah. And our plans for teachers, have we left that up to teachers to create their own barriers? Do we have barriers for them? What's our thought process?
We have the guidelines that we've set forth in the reopening plan. We have had some questions about mask mandates in individual classrooms. And what we have maintained is we would really like them to remain in compliance with our district-wide plan. If for some reason they cannot maintain those guidelines in their classroom, they have a circumstance that's out of the ordinary to work with administration on how we can mitigate that.
Are we allowing teachers to create their own barrier that they want, if they felt comfortable with desks arranged a certain way, or
Yeah.
giving them the freedom, I guess, to,
Classroom setup, we have left up to them. We've asked them to maximize social distancing between students. At this point, we have put plexiglass in high traffic areas, so in front of secretaries' desks. We have not put plexiglass in classrooms. Simply assuming that we will either be in yellow or red and that we'll be able to appropriately social distance.
from it.
what has the administrative teams and directors reported back in this last week as far as what they hope to see or where their concerns are?
Well, I think everybody was really comfortable when we formulated the reopening plan and where we had listed that we were going to kind of be lockstep with Southwest District Health and their ratings in tune with our reopening plan. I think everybody is a little bit nervous about determining our own metrics, just not knowing where those would fall or what the science is behind them. The other data point that I wanted to bring to your attention was just student class size. So I think everybody has probably an ideal number in their head as to what that is. I usually think of elementary students, but I wanted to make sure that you were aware that at both the middle school and the high school, those class sizes are significantly bigger. So the high school really tries not to surpass 36 in a class. When we started our online school, we had had to staff that school with existing staff. So we have had to take some staff out of buildings to account for the 500 or so kids we have going online, which has increased those class sizes sometimes as well, but we've still really tried to keep hard cap at 36. But when you're thinking about hybrid, recognize that that could still be, or yellow, I guess we'll call it, that could still be, up to 18 kids in a class. And then the other thing I would mention is when we worked through those student cohort assignments, we really tried to keep them grouped by family, not to break up families. And so that in itself made it to where those cohorts aren't perfectly equal. So 18 might actually be more like 22. That didn't fall exactly 50-50, and there was no way to make that exact if we wanted to keep family cohorts together. So just so you have an idea in your head, about what those class sizes are as you think about this.
Are the instructional specialists still teaching as part of those online instructors?
We're finalizing that right now. It looks like they're picking up one class each. Is kind of what we have in the works right now.
Is there, I say this in the week that it's 100 degrees, are there any opportunities to be outside?
I think there's some opportunity. But with what we're trying to do with distance learning on the other end, how do you get all that technology outside
Okay,
and remain
yeah.
connected for those kiddos? I think you can do some, but the idea of just moving all our classrooms outdoors
No, that's
is
answer.
difficult.
I think my concern is when you look, our county encompasses so much area, like mile wise. And I understand that our teachers are coming from other places, but at the same breath, like you pull our zip code numbers and look at them, those kids have been in daycare, they've been in Roaring Springs, they've been at parties, they've been at the beach, they've been at the canyon, they've been in Oregon, they've been playing golf, they've been everywhere. And so I just have a hard time. Like, I feel like we're okay to narrow our data down to the numbers that are specific to us. That doesn't mean we don't consider all of the data as a whole, because I feel like that does influence us. But I think when it comes to the black and white, I feel like our community numbers should drive what our community does within the respect of the whole. If our hospital capacity is not at capacity and there's room and our numbers look good, then I feel like, you have to take all of those things into consideration. But when you look at around us, I mean, Valley View's going back, Bishop Kelly's back, Boise State's going to try and go back. And I say try because nobody knows. But I mean, part of me feels like, let's give it a good go at Yellow and see where we're at. And if our threshold is, if we don't have the subs and we're having sick kids all the time. I mean, when Kim at Southwest District Health was talking to me about summer school, she said it was very successful because they did have those small class sizes. And I know that high school is going to look a little different, but I also feel like those older kids can wear a mask to school. I feel like it's a lot easier for them. I feel like the littler kids is where you really struggle, especially ones learning to read. But you can even pull up by age, like on the hospital records and stuff, how many kids per age. I think we've had like 16 kids ages 0 to 18 in Middleton have COVID. And I know that's past, like going backwards, but 16 out of 4,000 students so far, like assuming that that's the,
Yeah, and out of county, I think that's like maybe 630 kids total.
Well, I think it's important too to understand, I mean, just based on Southwest District Health, they've got us in yellow right now. Like, they have our zip code in yellow, last 7 days moving average, they're good with it. And the density of the zip codes that we cover in addition to Middleton isn't that much different than Middleton. I think I think we can safely make an assumption that because we don't pull people in from downtown, Caldwell, where everybody's packed in, that's probably something that we can extend to the boundaries of our school district and the people we're pulling in. That's not to say, throw caution to the wind, let's just go barreling forward. But if they're saying Middleton's yellow, I don't have a huge issue with saying that we go back to school yellow at this point, unless there's some freak thing where it explodes. We're going to see COVID in the school. There's nothing we can do to not see it. I think that it would be an ignorant position to say, hey, it's not going to happen, we're not worried about it. We got to be ready to move fast, but it's going to happen. The flu happens every year. It's not to say the two are the same. It's not what I'm trying to express, but it's not eradicated. It's going to be there. It's going to show up. And I feel comfortable looking at what they're saying about our zip code, extending it to the surrounding area that the school district covers, and saying, yeah, I think it's yellow. It's pretty.
And the ones extended are orange. And I'm assuming because there's a red area, which would be.
And one is Greenleaf and one is Notice, actually.
Oh, so they do color code those, and they change them weekly to update them with the. So if we.
I agree with both those comments, as in where Southwest District Health has us in yellow. I wholeheartedly believe in Alicia's comments too, that, we need to give it a go and react to where we're at. If we know something's gonna happen, it's all in how we react to it. But I think that there's a potential that we're going overboard by opening in a red when we could have the potential of being perfectly fine in yellow.
I agree.
So I think for the work session, we need to figure out what is our backstop, what is, what metrics we would use to say, okay, we're going all online. Is it percentage of teachers out? Is it percentage of students out? Is it
I would think it would be a combination. I mean, if we go off, if Southwest District Health changes this by zip code every 7 days, that would be a good guidance. However, if we're still in yellow, but we have no substitutes, obviously that's going to be a red flag to us that there's something else going on, or our attendance is getting, low. I think but I don't know how to come up with a percentage per se for that number, or a hard number, unless you do it, I guess, off of substitutes. But I mean, you could say the high school doesn't have any substitutes, but the elementaries do. So would you just shut that school down, or does it need to be a district-wide decision?
I don't know, for the sake of working parents trying to schedule work, find daycare, or, even figure out if they can stay home. I'm just keeping people on a roller coaster. I don't know. It's a hard one because there's people struggling. There's people that have to work from home that are ready to wring their kids' necks. And then there's ones that are can't work because they are stuck in this position. And there's a lot of, this isn't just a school impact. This is a community impact. And I think we have to think about that as well when we look at this is, how do we react? If one kid gets COVID and he's in a class, do we shut the whole school down? What is that? I don't know. I'm
that's
still
where,
just a shy, ignorant on
that's a
stuff
good,
that was planned before me.
so just to reiterate that, we definitely work hand in hand with South District Health. So what happens is if there's a positive case or someone that has symptoms, or they test and get positive, it refers, the district office gets notification. Typically, we call Southwest District Health and they work with them to say, okay, what class were they in? Who were the kids that are in here? How far apart were they? Did they have masks on? If they weren't far apart, how close were they? For how long? And then that's how they determine, okay, just this one kid or just these 3 kids need to be quarantined, or yes, the whole class, or no, it's through the whole school. And that's where they determine all of that. And we work closely with them on a case-to-case basis to determine that. The way she talked about summer school, like she said, if they're social distanced appropriately, it really wasn't a bad deal. And they were able to keep the schools open and running because they were social distanced.
Well, we already kind of dealt with that anyway in the spring.
we did.
I got to be one of those parents that got called every day.
For 10 days.
Well, our sports have been practicing through the summer, the fall. Boys are in 2-a-day with football right now. So we've already started school. It's just, and I think everybody's doing the best they can. So we're gonna see those numbers. That 6 feet rule works, and that's going to be that seems to be the gold standard. 6 feet under 15 minutes. And I think that's, but as far as a percentage to shut down, I think we owe that to the community to at least have a number that's there. And whether we decide on that number today, or if we need to know that we're going to open and decide that number later, work with everybody a little bit more, what makes sense that
I think we should try and get as close as we can to a proposal of something today to take them and ask their opinion and manipulate it instead of having nothing and say, what does everyone think? I think that would be a better use of our time. I know in our last meeting, we talked about evaluating it every 2 weeks. So I think if we start with that and say, okay, when we meet again in 2 weeks, what data are we going to look at? Are we going to look at this by zip code? And then we're going to look at our attendance, and we're going to look at our substitutes and have an outline of those numbers that we're going to look, and then try and go back and say, okay, if our 7-day rolling average puts us in the red, but we still have substitutes and we have all this stuff, and it was red 1 week and orange one week, where do we go? Like, I think those are the scenarios that we need to have the discussions over, so, and play out so that the community can plan.
Right.
Do
Well,
you
and
think 2 weeks at a time is a fair?
I think it would be adequate. I mean, we have a rolling average. If something spikes, of course, we need to react before that. But I mean, I'm looking here and it's giving us the by age group where we're coming in at cases. I mean, if we've got
Pretty low.
16 cases from age 0 to 18 that we're dealing with, if there's a rapid spike, we need to worry about that, right? And that's not to say we're not worried about vulnerable people of older age and things like that, but that's who's impacted directly by the school stuff. That's where we know that there's being some stuff moved around. And that seems to me that we look at our demographic that we have in school, and that's one of the things that we really take into consideration. If there's a spike amongst, the elderly at one of the assisted living facilities, do we need to shut down? Do we need to lock everything down for school if that's not the demographic impacted?
I think demographics are important because Southwest District Health manages the whole county, 0 to 100. We're managing the school district, staff and students. And I think we focus on that demographic.
So are we all comfortable following Southwest District's health color coding on our zip code areas
Yes,
for student base as?
Well,
I think so.
Again, with the caveat that I would go more just based on what they're calling Middleton, saying that, because if they're orange and we're yellow, I'm going with yellow because again,
65%.
yeah, the density of the population that it covers in the other areas is the same, but they're saying that Caldwell is at an orange level. Well, that's fine for downtown Caldwell, but those kids that are in the district are hanging out here, right? So I don't know, that's just a thought. We don't have to go that way, but that's certainly something I would be considering as we go off of neighboring as well.
I think from data sampling, I mean, you could probably make the argument to take Middleton by itself is the cleanest way, because anything else you bring in is going to bring in a whole bunch of other variables. And it's probably the snapshot, won't be our only snapshot, but it's probably the cleanest snapshot for us to look at.
Okay, so we're
I
gonna.
agree.
Oh, go ahead, Derek. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, I agree with Jake and what Kirk just said on that. By going off what our Middleton status is versus what Canyon County status is, or what Valley View or Caldwell status is.
Okay, so we're gonna look at the color of the zip code that's recommended, the color recommended by Southwest District Health of the zip code. We're gonna look at student attendance.
Yes.
Do we need to put a number on our student attendance, like percentage or?
Wait, help me understand what you mean when you say student attendance.
So when they shut down for the flu, let's say you've got a school with 300 kids and 140 are out sick. By that point, they're like, call it, go online for 2 weeks, let everyone get it out of their system, we'll clean really good, and then come back.
That would be impacted on well, I guess I'm assuming we got flu and COVID as two separate things. Is that going to get convoluted?
Eventually they will. And that's why I'm like, if we can look at just COVID right now and get the kids back in school and get some of these bugs worked out really good, because I'm sure that come December, January, February,
November,
hopefully it's not earlier than that.
Day 2 when my kids come home with somebody else.
that will happen. So that's why that, even though a color might be yellow, if our kids are out sick with other things, or they're just not getting tested, but they're still sick, if the attendance is low, at what point do we say, we don't know if this is COVID or not, but it's not worth it for us to have everyone sick still coming to school? So that's why I feel like student attendance should be its own data point to look at, because there is other sicknesses besides COVID, but we need to treat them all equally.
Together right now. So is that 25? Is that 30? Is that 50?
I don't know what that percentage is or how to make a good estimate of that. I mean, if you have,
Is there,
I'd say 20.
go ahead, Derek.
is there something that you can clarify that Southwest District Health has in process on, you know, a percentage or anything like that that we can use as a guideline or not?
No, I called today for that exact reason, and she said there isn't one, that they don't have a formula that they use. It's really up to the discretion of the schools.
That's what the doctors group said, the same thing, that there wasn't a hard fast number. It was up to schools, staff.
Well, then also, and also too, are you gonna separate it by high school, middle and elementary school, right? Or how are we gonna do that?
Yeah, it might be best just to contain it since there's a lot of families that have
Oh,
an array of,
yeah.
because if it hits one, it's gonna start affecting the others. I don't know, I'm not a medical professional, so I don't know how to nip it in the bud the best, but it seems to me that if it starts hitting, it's gonna start hitting everywhere, so let's shorten that as.
That's just not maybe the grade school. If it's coming, you're gonna go. I mean, if we're comfortable, value use is 25%. Are we comfortable with 25% with the administration's oversight that if they want to pull the alarm bell earlier or because of staffing or, I mean.
Or are we making this too hard? Do we just go for COVID and do the zip code to determine our colors? And then just treat the other stuff just like we would any other normal year if COVID didn't exist? Once the administration feels like we have enough people out or they're running into subs, they give us the red flag and say, we've hit a threshold, we don't have subs, too many kids are out. I mean, how would you handle that with the flu or on a normal year without COVID? What would happen?
Well, we may hit that threshold faster than what we're accustomed to, because what we have done in the past when we're short on subs is we dump those kids together in classes with one teacher, and that's absolutely not going to be an acceptable solution.
No.
So yeah, I am concerned about how quickly we might hit our cap on subs. And I'm sorry, what was your question?
Well, just wondering if we just use our zip code indicator from Southwest District Health. So right now they have us in yellow, so we would go back in yellow and just follow every 2 weeks what their recommendation is per our zip code. Unless,
So are you only following the 83644?
that's what I'm asking.
Okay.
If we only follow that as a school board to determine the colors, unless we hear different from you that we have no staff, I just wonder if we're gonna make this more complicated by trying adding all these data points, or if we just say, we're gonna follow what South District Health determines by our zip code, that's the recommendation we're gonna go from, unless we hear from our administration that we're having staffing issues or our attendance is concerning.
Yep, we can absolutely keep you up to date on the staffing issues and student attendance.
Would that be easier for parents? They could get on and look, they
Yes.
can see the color.
Yes.
We all know it's coming, the data's coming from the health district. It's not coming from us. But then we also just need to keep a close eye on our teachers, make sure they're staying healthy, and then our students. And as those numbers change, just be in close contact with you guys on what that looks like. I would feel more comfortable on that than just picking a number like 25% and trying to figure out
What is
25%.
Well, we don't even have a baseline at this point because we don't know how many people their families aren't interested in them coming back to school. They're looking to have them sit at home on remote learning, right? So,
or even homeschool, not even.
yeah. So I mean, I think we've got to get everybody back to school to figure that one out.
Yeah. And I agree to Jake's comment too, that we don't even have a baseline, as well as with Alicia as well. I think we could have the potential to make it too complicated right now. And we don't know what the complications can be. This is all new to everybody. And without having a baseline, I agree with both of you guys that we should go off of what Southwest District Health is saying we are at per the zip code to start out with.
Any other Any other control alt delete measures besides that we would stop school, or Kristen, or is there anything else you'd want built into?
I think I'm thinking a little bit about that every 2-week assessment. So if we are getting better, so say we're in red at some point and looking at moving into a yellow, what kind of notice would we give to community and to teachers? If we're assessing that every 2 weeks, would we say with the new announcement, it takes effect 7 days later? Is it, I'm just thinking too about our teachers that are at home with their own childcare issues. Would we, change those categories? Everybody's, I think, going to need a little bit of time to prepare. And so really, what will that look like if we're assessing every 2 weeks?
Maybe we assess on Wednesdays and you have a week to finish out. 7-day average doesn't move that fast, so.
And we can hope that that color hasn't changed again for 7
It's,
days.
but maybe but I don't think there's anything stopping us from looking at every 7 days. If we see numbers going crazy, like, we don't have to wait 2 weeks. We can definitely, by your authority, say, nope, we're in danger. I don't think that's a problem.
Yeah, I think we just want to be able to clearly communicate to both staff and community what this assessment schedule will look like and how quickly it may change, so that nobody's caught off guard.
Well, certainly if the level changes, but it's not changing with the demographic of the kids that are at school, then I think, let it ride for the rest of the week or whatever, and then we go from there. I mean,
Yeah, like if
maybe
it's a
that's
nursing
good way.
home or something.
Again,
Yes.
if it's hitting a nursing home, it's terrible, but does it warrant shutting down school? And again, we're sympathetic to everybody with elderly parents or that is vulnerable health-wise, but if it's contained to one area, we know what that is. Then until that group starts to climb, or even so, let it run out the school. Let's have a conversation with the Southwest District Health and say, hey, is it really going to hurt? Is it going to impact the school kids as much? Is there any reason for us to pull out of school? I'm fine with weekly looking at that thing and just using the map on Southwest School District Health to at least get the conversation rolling so that we can make that decision.
I think we should look at it unofficially every week, but I think as far as calling a meeting to determine where we're going for the next 2 weeks, I feel like a Wednesday on that second week, and then it would take effect that Monday. So that gives them that Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, because everyone would have the ability to log on and to watch the colors and the numbers themselves. So I feel like if you do need to do daycare and stuff, they hopefully would be a little more proactive, and maybe we can even link this site to our school website or something so that parents can reference it, since it's what we're going to be using for reference. I don't want to change it every single week if we don't have to, just because I don't want everyone to be waiting Wednesday afternoon to say, okay, are we going next week or are we not? I feel like 2 weeks at least gives them a little bit of time to plan and prepare. And then it also gives us time to have those discussions like, okay, we turned red. Is it because it was a long care facility? Was it just a specific area that got it? Was it, and kind of have those discussions with Southwest District Health, because then it could change that next week back. So it could drive our decisions a little bit.
Yeah, I think it's an arbitrary number. I talked to the doctor group today. I said, so where does this 5 out of 10,000 number come from? Because it's arbitrary. It's not in the CDC guidelines. They all use subjective words. There's not numbers. You look at the White House numbers, those are one numbers. You look at the CDC numbers, those are one numbers. You look at Southwest metrics, they're different. So everybody has a different, there's not standardization in what red is. It's different by by area.
But I think our red plan kind of helps adapt. If we turn red, we can still have them one day. But then if it is an outbreak in the school, we would need to go to a hard red, which would be everyone's online for those circumstances. So I do think that was an appropriate move just for those considerations. Like if that puts us in the red and we need to move to that one for a soft red versus a hard red, we have that option now.
Okay.
So I would be in favor of doing it still every 2 weeks on a Wednesday to take effect that Monday. Because that means we would just have
I agree.
one more day
I
of
agree,
school, of the
too.
kids in school, and then that weekend to make
Prepare,
plans.
yeah.
Lisa, do you feel like if we made a decision on a Wednesday and then Thursday was fine, that Friday, Saturday, Sunday is enough time for the teachers to switch if we needed to go to an all online from like a yellow to a red?
Dave, can I put you on the spot?
Yeah.
Defer?
Well, and the only reason I'm deferring to him is because we've had conversations around the training. He's seen kind of the technology we're using. I think he has a good understanding of our plan. And so, I would even like to hear just from the teacher perspective, because I can give my opinion, but it's not me and they're doing that and making those adjustments, so.
Well, once we get going, it'll be just routine, because our plan is to be following our pacing guide, teaching a new lesson every day, and just going as just different kids in the classroom. So I don't think that once the teachers get accustomed to this mode of teaching, I think the transition will happen pretty quick. So I personally think it would be okay. I mean, teachers want to know things as soon as possible. So they
Right.
think ahead, but
And I think that's most of the stuff that, they're concerned in the transition has been more around their own childcare and more of the personal side, rather than the teaching side. I think once they find that routine, then
So do you think, Dave and Lisa, since you can get on and look at the zip code colors and see this, what we're referring to and what's gonna kind of guide what our school district does, do you think that will be helpful to them in knowing and making those plans or not?
I think so.
Because it's not some secret formula or something that we're gonna calculate. It's everyone has access to it. The Southwest District Health updates it. We're all looking at the same.
I just think it's about the best we can do from a concise metric, has our town in it, has our density. There's other indicators, but I think in perfect science, it's probably as good a data we're gonna get. Dave?
Thank you. I would like to go back to the mask issue for a moment, if you don't mind.
Go ahead.
Because we do have some staff who consider themselves at a high-risk category, have family members that they either live with or are caregivers for, that they're concerned of that transmission. Would the board consider that if a staff member or a teacher considers themselves at a high risk, that they take a little firmer of a stance on the mandated mask in their classroom?
And I think that's what Kristen talked to. If they talk to you, then you guys will consider that. I'm fine with that personally, because I feel like I guess let me rephrase that. I think that's easier in high school and middle school. I don't know if it would be handled the same in elementary. And the reason I say that is two reasons. I feel like middle school and high school kids are old enough to wear a mask and be respectful and understand the reasonings behind that for both parties. And I also feel like they also have the choice because they're more independent, and most of them, not all, but most of them are pretty able to do the online piece themselves, so that if they absolutely would not wear a mask in that class, that they could either do that class at home or sit in the lunchroom and do that. Or, I mean, there might be some options there. Elementary, I'm not sure how that would look, and I don't know what kind of conversations you guys have had. If you felt like someone really was compromised on case-to-case basis, what your stance would be. But generally speaking, my personal things would be okay. I would be okay with that. But
So where we have said, come have an additional conversation with us, it's been if they couldn't meet for whatever reason, the guidance in the plan, right? So if you're doing some sort of activity in your class, or you're set up in some lab atmosphere where you can't maintain those guidelines, come and talk to us about maybe mandating masks for that. It wasn't, I'm at a high risk, I'm over age 50, so you can put a mask mandate in your classroom. I think if we want to do that, I would suggest that you guys are amending the reopening plan to give teachers that leeway, and the community understands that we're allowing them to have that leeway.
How many teachers do you think there are?
I don't have an
That
exact
would-
number for you.
Well, I mean,
It's definitely in the minority.
over 100 or?
That would want that in their own room, but it would not be close to 100, I don't think, no. It's a small number, but it's.
Well, we love all our teachers. We want them all to be safe. I don't think,
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
could we say that they could? I don't know. Thoughts, Pam, Jake?
I don't have an issue with it. I mean, if somebody's
I think
vulnerable
so.
and they really, I mean, if it's legit, you know.
It's
if-
okay.
If we're
I
teaching
think
our kids to
yes,
learn how to be
Respect
productive
your
citizens,
adult,
to
yes.
learn how to be respectful in that way.
it's kind of like if you want to go to Walmart, you have to wear a mask. And if you don't want to wear your mask, then don't go to
Nice teacher
Walmart.
to go to Walmart.
I guess. I don't know.
I just worry in the elementary, that's a lot harder to do.
Yeah,
Oh, yes.
the flip side is, I know my grandson started first grade in Boise, it's school, and they were. private school.
Online.
He's on private school, and he's going, and he's freaking so happy to wear his mask to be with his kids all day.
I think
His
you're
little
right.
sister was telling him how he's good with it, so I do think we need to allow some type of secondary review. I have a hard time saying it's blanket because I state that I'm compromised. I mean, so I don't want to seem deaf to people that are actually compromised,
Yes.
and I don't want to be the judge and jury of that. But maybe I need to be. Because I know maybe you don't want to be either, right? So, I mean, somehow I think does that work in with discussion from a doctor? Does it, I mean, what slippery slope are we opening up?
I don't think
I don't
doctors are
know.
issuing notes for
No.
masks. If you can or can't wear one, just,
FYI?
yeah.
I mean, there are other guidelines in concert with masks, right? I mean, where they're saying if you don't have the ability to wear a mask, stay X number of feet away.
That'd be hard if you were an
So,
elementary
yeah,
teacher. Stay up
I don't
there.
know. That's tough. I mean, you just send little Joey in the back of the room, you know, and let him sit back there if he doesn't want to wear a mask, you know, keep him away.
I think that those teachers should have the right to
Come forward.
express to their students that, you know, hey, I would appreciate it if you wore a mask in my class because I'm compromised and social distance, but I do worry if we start picking and choosing and saying you have to in this class and not in this class and not in this
Mhm.
class, that it might just turn into a huge mess. So, I mean,
I think you could also maybe add language that said, maybe we will ask students and staff to wear masks when appropriate social distancing cannot occur.
and I would be in support of that. I
That
think
would be
that's
good. Yeah.
appropriate.
And
I
I
thought we
know
already had that.
we're still probably going to have some staff that do not feel like that's a stringent enough requirement.
Do you think if those students who don't wear masks, like let's say it's 50-50, I don't know what the numbers of kids that will wear masks or won't, that if they put the ones that have masks closer to them and the other ones farther back away from them, that would help appease that, or?
That would, until that student needs help with their math problem or
Mm-hmm.
answering a question where the teacher needs to get a little closer to them.
Which, if that's the case, if, you know, they said, could you please put a mask on so I can come help you with that? If they carry them, or if we have, you know, because the school does have some for teachers, right? But we're not supplying any for students, is that?
We're supplying both masks and face shields for staff, and then we have said for students, anyone that comes without one but would like to wear one is just lacking the resources, we will provide it.
So that might be an option there. I'm gonna be 110% transparent that I am concerned. Part of the reason I'm nervous about mandating masks 100% is financial. And our numbers already enrollment are down. And I feel like just we're walking a fine line. And I know that that shouldn't drive decisions, but I'm just being transparent that when you look at the whole picture, if it's versus having that kid there in a seat learning versus they're not going to enroll and they're not going to do online school either, I would rather put them in the back of the classroom and try and separate them.
Valley View.
Their mask mandate has,
My sister's a teacher there,
and their enrollment's down because
Mhm.
of that.
and they're losing kids. So,
So I don't know. I don't know what the answer is. I feel like we should try and accommodate those teachers the best we can. I think if the school is willing to provide masks for those who want them, if the teachers say, hey, I would like to help you, but I'm compromised, it says that in their syllabus that that I'm compromised, please wear a mask in my class, like not mandated, but just ask. I think that's fair that they could ask them to, but also then just note to parents, like, I don't feel like it's worth I want to help your student and I will help them from a distance unless they have a mask on. And I feel that it's safe for me to be able to approach them within that closer than that 6 feet. Is that clear as mud? Doesn't answer your question. I don't know. I don't know what the answer
I appreciate
is.
the consideration.
But also questions could be followed up online too. I mean, it's later in the week or the beginning of the week if that's the, I think we're all gonna have to work through this. I don't think it should be lost that the respect of teachers, I mean,
yeah.
should be considered. It's just hard to mandate it, I think,
We
gotta find a way.
changed our wording to say, please wear a mask. So I feel
It
like,
should say that the expectation is that you wear a mask, period. So if we send that home to parents, preschool is opening, here's the email, here's the guidelines, we ask you to wear a mask, bar none. I mean, not mandated, but we'd also.
we're trying.
There's so many wishy-washy ways to try and get around it. If you just say, we ask that you wear a mask, pretty much leaves it, hey, the expectation's there, but because if you word it like, well, we'd sure like you to wear a mask. Well, there's a lot of kids that sure like not to wear a mask, and it's hard. I mean, I just got back from a vacation within quarantine time where I hiked the Minnetonka Caves over in eastern Idaho, and 840 steps. I was wearing a wet wash rag around my face at the end of that hike, and I'm just, I'm huffing and puffing because I'm old and fat, and I'm blowing this stuff everywhere. And I'm just thinking, well, this mask is worthless. So I mean, it's more complicated than just throwing a piece of fabric over your face, right? I mean, there's issues of, if they're using reusable masks. This is information we got to get out to everybody to say, hey, if they're coming home after a day of running around and their mask is nasty, it needs to go in the washer. You can't just keep wearing the same one every week, or paper masks get thrown away. We need a place to put those. I'm assuming that that's all squared away at a whole nother level than this conversation. But certainly, if we're asking them to wear a mask, we also need to make sure that we're providing the opportunity for them to have it if they don't have the means to buy a mask.
So would we change our plan? In our ramblings, do we come across the sentence that we need to change?
Or can we just allow them to put them in their syllabus?
Or are we good as written?
I think you could go either way. I don't know that we've actually changed anything. I mean, we said masks were highly encouraged from the beginning. We're asking you to please wear them. The question we then get is, well, what happens if I don't wear one? Well, we don't have a mask mandate, so nothing happens. And then as a result, we have probably lower participation in mask wearing. It's a hard decision.
I would probably just respond with the same
I think
sentence
so.
over and over
Yeah.
again. We ask that you wear a mask. What if I
Mhm.
don't? We ask that you wear a mask.
Yeah,
Well, our schools will get shut down sooner. So if
Yeah.
they want to be in school, to help negate that spread,
I
then
agree.
I have a little different opinion on that. I think ask is almost like mandate. I like the word encourage, like was stated in there. And why is there not what is wrong with the proximity? If you're within the proximity and you cannot be outside of 6 feet, then you need to wear a mask. If you're outside of 6 feet, then we strongly encourage you to wear a mask, but you're getting away from this. We're asking you to wear a mask, which is almost like saying, we're demanding you wear a mask at the same time. And I think there's a possibility you're gonna get some pushback on that. I like the word encourage, absolutely. And I believe most people will probably adhere to it on that note, but also if you're outside of proximity, I like the idea, and of course I'm not a teacher, and if it makes it more difficult or what have you, but the kids that, their parents want them to wear a mask all the time, those are the kids that are maybe in the front, and the kids that are choosing not to wear a mask or for whatever reason. Hopefully that's not the case, but if that is the case, then they're more towards the back of the room, or they're outside that 6 foot perimeter or what have you. I think if we just go in and say, hey, we're asking you to wear a mask and leave it at that, I think that's kind of a slippery slope. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, we voted on that last time just to ask it. I liked it because it was that. I don't have a problem adding 6 feet in it either. If we make it more, that actually tightens it up a little bit. But Dave?
Teachers, especially at the elementary level, don't teach at the front of the room most of the time. They're amongst the kids.
Yeah.
So if we're not going to enforce the encouragement or the asking of students to wear a mask, I would just like to also clarify that teachers won't be given discipline or talking to or whatever if they say, if you want to help me to sit down and help you with this assignment, I need to ask you to wear a mask. Because it's hard to do that from more than 6 feet away to actually sit down and help a child.
Well, and I would add to that with the social distancing. So if we're in hybrid and yellow, with some of those larger class sizes, it all depends on the classroom and they vary in size, but having 18 to 22 kiddos in there, they're not going to be socially distanced. So then we would ask them to wear a mask.
Wear a mask.
Or that teacher would have. So I think we can just, if you want, put one line in that says, students and or staff may be asked to wear masks when social distancing cannot be achieved.
and I think that's
I think
appropriate.
that's appropriate. That's fair.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with that. I just wonder if that's strong enough. I think there's a chance that if,
There's very strong opinion on both sides.
yeah, absolutely, but I think the rights of one person to not wear a mask is X, and they have their rights being exercised immediately. The right of a teacher or a student to ask to be distanced at 6 feet with a mask is not so easily protected. And I think that balance is what we're trying to strike, is that if a teacher chooses to say, hey, I want students that are closer to me than 6 feet in a mask, I don't think that's the end of the world. I think they can email a question, they can show something from 6 weeks, but I just think if we're trying to balance both and we're wanting to walk this fine line, that if a teacher says, I want a kid within 6 feet of me, that's great. Okay, if you don't want to wear that mask, then stay at 6 feet. Email me the question, have your parents email me the question, but because the side that wants that protection is as loud as the side that doesn't want a mask at all. And if we say that, do we open up Pandora's box?
I think where it gets tricky, the trickiest is in the elementary,
Yes.
just because that the kids can't advocate for themselves like that, and you can't teach them from 6 feet. But I guess, I mean, they have whiteboards and stuff you can hold up, but I think they just lose that human connection and the ability to communicate. And
I just see teachers, especially in elementary level, I shouldn't say it that way, but I just see elementary teachers just as amazing advocates for kids, because I couldn't do that job. And I don't see teachers as a whole putting up this barrier that I don't want to teach you kids all stay with 6 feet unless they had a valid reason and we're trying to work through this together, and we're all in this together. We have to be able to get through this together. No one opinion is going to get to carry the day for us to stay open. Got to find that.
And honestly, in the end, my additional concern outside of the health aspect is that the masks become this whole focus thing, so heavily distracting that no learning gets done at all. Everybody's dinking around with their mask, worrying about, fighting about it, arguing about it, and being freaked out about whether or not they're, going to drop dead the next day of COVID. So, something that's, it is, the balance has to be struck, and I don't think it's unreasonable to add the 6 feet in there. I think it's a good idea. I think we should do it.
I think so.
And I also think this is a work in progress too. We're opening up and we're going to have to see what works. And if there's something that first week of school, this looks so crazy that we've got to tweak something. I mean,
Well, we know it doesn't work, right? I'm just bar none, open the doors and call it good. We know that does not work, right? So err on the side of caution, slide into it quick. I mean, your first day driving, you don't put the gas to the ground,
Can we add 6 feet in there? I think we got to keep balance. This has got to be balanced. I think it gives both sides a workaround. We may be too worried about it, but
I think it's good.
still have notes for when we bring it up in our meeting.
I've got notes.
Okay, good. Any other discussion before we open the meeting up?
Just a quick question. So for reopening on the 8th, I think originally we had talked about maybe releasing on the 31st, which category we were opening in. Would we actually delay that then to the Wednesday prior? Or what do we think on that timeline? I just want to make sure we're clear on what we're, the 31st is the Monday prior to the Tuesday the following week that we're starting. But I know you guys were talking about assessing on Wednesdays. So just so we're clear on our communication as to when that call.
I think that should probably be on the 31st. I don't think that it's fair to pull that off on a Wednesday right before.
A holiday weekend and have it. Okay. So the first one will move to the 31st.
And then move to Wednesdays thereafter.
Okay.
So then the next one would be, let's see, the 16th. We have a board meeting the 14th. Should we do them on Mondays? Would that fall on every other one being on a board meeting day? So if it was,
No, because you have different.
No, that's true.
so the first one will be on the 31st, and then the next one would be on the 9th of September.
Because we're going to look at it weekly, right?
I thought we were gonna go let them know 2 weeks that Wednesday, go 2 weeks, and then let them know that Wednesday if it's gonna change for that Monday on the 3rd week. Is that,
That's what I thought too.
so I think that would be right. We would look at it again on the 9th of September. And then that would determine what we decide on the 9th would determine what category the next 2 weeks, the 14th the week of the 14th and week of the 21st would be, and then we'd look at it again on the 23rd.
We do it that way. The first week, we're just doing it, what, for 1 week, not 2 weeks. Right? Which probably is not the worst idea.
To get open.
Well, yeah, no, I think,
Keep a close eye on that one.
Probably not the worst
Probably
idea.
okay.
So can we do that? Do we have to, can we just, so Gina would post a meeting and can we all just call in since we all just pull up the same? Is it a work session or is it a meeting? Because an action has to be taken.
Well, I think we only have to take an action if we change the action, right? If we'll continue to operate.
On the agenda though, the ability to make an action. Right. So you'd want to schedule an actual meeting, not just a work session.
So if we stated today that as of today, it's in yellow and it will stay in yellow until such as the board determines in their weekly or bi-weekly evaluation that it changes, then would we have to have an actual agenda item every 2 weeks, or it would just stay yellow until it changed and we called a meeting to change it?
I would say with the latter.
Okay, is everyone comfortable with that so that we don't have to have an actual meeting posted 24 hours in advance every 2 weeks?
But we would have, you couldn't change that Wednesday without a notice.
Right, but we would
Before.
we would be looking at this on Monday, Tuesday, since we can look at it all week long and say, okay, we need to call a meeting, right? And then post the meeting Tuesday
So we'd have to
or
post a
meeting
meeting,
Wednesday.
we'd have to post a meeting notice on Tuesday and make a change on Wednesday.
I don't know, is that the best way to go about this? Thoughts, opinions?
I don't know if
is
there's
there
a
any
best
other
way.
way?
I think we just gotta start doing it and.
Yeah, I
figure it
think we
out.
start that way, and then if it looks like that we need to post a meeting every 2 weeks as a COVID-19 update meeting,
Always cancel it.
we can cancel it, but it could be a placeholder. I think we start with, we'll only post a meeting if we need change.
Okay, so are we
If
okay
we need to put a placeholder then
posting it in yellow and then saying if it needs to change, then we'll make that change on the 31st of August?
what do you want?
So you're going to announce that we would, as of right now, we would be starting in yellow.
Mhm.
And there could be a change to that on August
31st,
31st.
yep.
Well, that will just follow the Southwest District
Oh,
Health
like that.
guidelines. So if it, between now and September 8th or now and August 31st, if it changes to red, then we would address that by the 31st. But plan on yellow. I mean, I don't know. I haven't looked at this zip code map every single day, so I don't know how fast those numbers really change.
It's a rolling average anyways, so
Yeah,
it's,
it is.
yeah, so it's,
Well, but-
it's a snapshot of 7 days, which is not bad.
I
So we'll catch it within a week if there's a crazy uptick.
Mm-hmm. Cause they were red before, and they've gone to orange.
Because we've
so.
had those lower days. It's
Mhm.
trending down for sure.
Mhm.
I'm comfortable with that. It's, you're given a path forward so you can start to watch it and it's not a
And-
secret.
And everyone can watch it,
Everybody
yeah.
can watch it
Yeah.
and so.
Okay,
Any other discussion in our work session? Well, in that case, I'd entertain a motion to call special meeting to order.
I make a motion to call the special meeting to order.
Second,
Second.
all those in favor say aye.
I
Aye.
Aye.
I would entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
I'll second it.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Start the pledge.
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So our first action item, 5A, to approve the metric for determining reopening level and timeline of assessments. Who has the best notes?
So I will make a motion that we, hang on, let me retract that motion. There's not an an action item to amend the plan to add wording. So does that need to wait? How do we need to handle that? Because we already approved the agenda. Is that considered an emergency, or do we add it to the September meeting?
That's what would be nice to have parts. Technically, we could have added it to the beginning. It's not on the agenda, so it would have to be an emergency item, but we could also redraft and have a call-in meeting and give notice to and make it clean without having to do emergency meeting and clean up the whole document itself, and just, I think we're better off doing that than just sticking it in here.
Yes.
I think it's
Okay.
just, we wait.
So that's just a housekeeping item. Is that okay? Okay. So we'll address that at a different time. So
You okay with that?
Yes, sorry, what did you just?
So instead of taking action right now, let's go ahead and look at the whole document.
stick the agenda, how's it written.
Stick with the agenda. Let's look at the document. We can do a quick call-in board meeting if we need to clean the whole document up and
Sure.
just make sure we're clean and not rushed and
Okay.
the document looks good for everybody.
So everyone's okay with that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I would like to make a motion that we use the Southwest District Health daily incident rate 7-day rolling average by zip code as our guiding, Middleton zip code, as the guiding data to our phased opening. And to review that every 2 weeks on a Wednesday. And if there's a change to be made, it will be made take effect that following Monday. And we would start with the current color as stated today, August 19th, as yellow.
I second it.
Is there any more discussion? None seeing. All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Motion carries 5-0. We've had to make some changes to our school calendar because of our delayed start. Kristen, did you want to address anything? Option A, option B? How do you want to?
Sure, so with that delayed start, we lost 11 instructional student days in the calendar. So we worked through a few different options to get those days back in. We came up with 3 options and put it to our calendar committee and allowed them to narrow it down to 2 options. Both options that you have in front of you have 9 days, 9 student days included back in. One of them has predominantly used Fridays to get those student days back in. The other one has an extended end to the school year with, I believe, a Friday added back in September and October. We sent surveys out to both the staff and the community on their calendar preferences for these 2. We had 276 staff responses. 29% wanted to go with the extended school year, which is option A, and 70%, 71% wanted to go with option B, which is adding those Fridays in. And then on the community responses, we had 1,629 20% wanted to extend the year, and 80% wanted to add those Fridays back in. So responses were very consistent both ways, both preferring option B as they are labeled.
I'm looking at the two and they both look like they get out on the same day.
That's what I was
So
just
what-
gonna
what
I
say.
am
know
I
this
missing?
one, if you look on option A, there's a little black box around June 10th. And if you look to the right of it, it will say last day of school for students. If you have calendar A.
Right,
That's calendar A.
So that's where they're getting that. It goes clear
But
out.
look,
Right, the
that's
calendar B has the same exact thing.
Oh,
I was
did they
wondering
not?
the same thing myself. I was like,
That is our error. So calendar B, you can see that little black box. We just
Mhm.
forgot to take it off the 10th. It's on the 27th. So
Oh,
it's
okay.
calendar
That
B would
makes
be
sense.
May 27th.
And graduation would be May 20th, that, on that calendar as well.
yeah,
So just that whole bottom June part would be.
yes.
So to be clear, option B has the Fridays added back in,
Yes.
but we're getting out the same.
Yeah, and then we did do some switching of days for teachers, just so that we could front load them with professional development prior to that September 8th start. So, but in terms of instructional days for students, those are the changes.
my preference would be to try and get it back online because there are other schools in the area that family people go to that are on track right where they were. And so let's not upset the apple cart for summer plans any more than
Oh,
we
so-
have to.
No, I think
And I like before Memorial Day too.
seems like
Yeah.
I like numbers that say 70 and 80% people like a certain category. I'm good at swimming in D.
My only question was, what those Fridays look like. Assuming that we probably won't be in green, are they gonna be all online for everyone regardless, since we're on a block schedule? Or would it be trying to figure out how to make it even between if people go in person or not? So that was the question that I had, is what those Fridays would look like.
And I think our recommendation would be to have those Fridays be remote. We didn't include in our student assignment cohorts, Fridays, because they weren't initially in the calendar. If we were in green, obviously those Fridays would be face-to-face. Hard red, obviously they're remote. Somewhere in the middle where we will likely be, I think it's gonna be difficult to get those Fridays assigned and try and balance them out. So I would say that it's probably in our best interest to have those as remote.
Yeah.
And, oh, go ahead, Jake.
I would say I'd agree with that, being how that doesn't, and that allows people to plan for either way. My kids are home, whether they're playing Legos
Yes.
or whether they're online, they're still at home and they can still plan around that without being too crazy.
Did that change any of the professional development days for the teachers on those Fridays? Did any of those get bumped, or the teachers would then work 2 Fridays a month instead of 1?
So Teachtoberfest was affected. I'm gonna look at you, because we probably have it most recently in your
Yeah,
mind.
so Teachtoberfest, when we originally made the change to delay, we had taken that Friday, October 2nd, and removed that PD day and given it back to teachers for these 6 days that are coming up.
Okay,
But we left October 1st as a PD day. So the change that happens in October now is the student day happens on Thursday, and teachers have professional development again on October 2nd.
okay.
So that day comes back for them there. And then the other Fridays are not impacted that were already scheduled, so teachers still have professional development and work days built in. The September 18th would be the only other one, but that was just impacted by our delay, and we traded in that day for these 6 days coming up as well. So those would have been the only 2 days that were impacted on the whole calendar.
So the number of days that they were allotted per contract discussion and everything still lines up, I guess, is what my question
Yeah,
is. So we're
teacher
even.
contract days and student days, yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion that we approve the amended 2020-2021 school calendar to option B.
I'll second that.
There's a second. Any more discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Motion carries 5-0. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
I make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Thanks, everyone.
Thanks,
Thank
Derek.
you.